Alright, so now that we've painted our straight colors from our tube, what we're going to do is we're going to start now working basically down. So we're going to need all of the colors. Now, we want to work a little quick with this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first just put out a little bit of my crimson red, and the first color I need, my brilliant red, and then the next color I'm definitely going to need is crimson. So I'm just going to put out those two for right now. And the first one is I'm mixing, the focus is having crimson, brilliant red being more dominant than the crimson. So I'm just going to take a little bit there, and I'm going to take a little bit of the crimson, and I'm going to mix that. Now I'm not putting it all the way in my large one, like larger drop that I had. I did pull that off to the side, and I'm going to paint that in that square. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same color and I'm going to now add more crimson to it, because now I'm going to work above and I want the crimson to be more dominant than the brilliant red. So now that I've done that, now I'm going to rinse out my brush because I don't need that color anymore. And you can see why you don't really need a lot of color out right now, because you're using just, it's really small sections. So now I'm going to take the lemon yellow, squeeze out a little bit of that, and basically repeat the process. So now I'm going to take my crimson red, brilliant red again. Good heavens, I don't know why I keep getting those confused. And I'm going to take some yellow, and I'm going to mix that in. And once again, my brilliant red is more dominant than my yellow. So it's going to be like a dark red-orange color there. All right. Then I'm going to rinse my brush out. And I'm going to take now a little bit more yellow. Just a little bit of that over there. And I want my yellow to be a bit more dominant now. I'm going to paint my lemon yellow. And because I also have my crimson, while this is all still wet, I'm also going to take and do the same thing. So I'm going to take, actually, do the yellow first. A little bit of that crimson. A little bit goes a long way, you can see. So I'm going to see the difference of those two colors with that. Now I'm going to take a little bit more crimson. And I'm going to do that one here. So you can see how this process is going to go. So now as I work with my medium yellow, I'm going to do the same thing where I start with my brilliant red and I work my way over, and I will end up combining the medium yellow and the lemon yellow right here. So I have my two yellows done, and now I'm going to continue working with my greens. So same process. I'm going to pull just a little bit of my green. Actually, I'm going to pull more of my green, I think, first for now. And I'm going to pull some of that brilliant red to start off with, a little bit there. So it's more green. Let's see, maybe. It looks like it's more red dominant now. So, and again, I'm just using a small amount of paint, both that I've put down on my palette and that I'm mixing with, because again, you can see with these areas being super small, you do not need a lot. On to crimson. So we like to see the difference of the dominance of the colors because it really helps give us a good idea of, you know, what they each might look like when they are mixed, with one being heavier than the other. If we were to just always kind of think about going down and we don't really look at the, like, you know, changing the dominancy, then we might not really understand the difference of them. I'm going to first start off with this one now, this time. Green's a lot stronger. And now I'm going to carefully pick up a little bit more without contaminating. The hardest part when you're doing this is trying not to contaminate your paint, because you definitely don't want to have a bunch of your colors in there. So again, you can see I'm just using the very, very tip of my brush when I pick up those colors, and I'm trying to always think about using the lighter color first. I forgot to do that with the yellow, so this time I'm going to do it with the yellow. Pick up that one first, rip it off, grab some green. A little bit of green first, so that way I can do this one. And notice how the two yellows actually do look different than, you know, as you mix them with the other colors. And even the reds have looked different too. So I'm going to continue working on my green, doing the same process, and my blue. So now that I've got a little bit more done, I actually am running out of my lemon yellow. So if you start to notice like you're out of your colors, just squeeze yourself a little bit more. Again, you don't need a lot, so, you know, again, this is really small amounts. So I'm now on to my phthalo blue. So again, as I'm working on that, I'm working kind of around my circle. It's in the center, and you can see that I've also started to use the tops of my palette, again, just depending on what you're doing. So as I keep going, again, this is a pretty dark color, so I'm actually going to start off with a little bit more of my red, my brilliant red this time, and just add a little bit of blue into that first. So I have more of the dominant being under the red side right now. And now I can add a little bit more blue. I'm going to come up to the blue, paint that in. Hopefully, as you've been working on this, you can see the difference between each of the greens, the yellows, and how, as you've mixed them, again, the dominant looks one way versus the other dominant going to the side. So, again, hopefully you've been able to see that a little bit. It has been pretty interesting for me, just as a reminder, how these paints are working compared to some of the other ones that I've used before, which is kind of neat in that sense too. So now I'm on to crimson, so I have a little area of that ready. Didn't have enough paint the last time, so I definitely want to make sure I have more of that. So as I work with the crimson compared to even the brilliant red, each looks, you know, really different as they get mixed with these colors too. And hopefully you're seeing that with the crimson and the reds, the greens. I don't know why I just rinsed my brush out. That was kind of silly. And now I have blue as more dominant. So you can see with phthalo blue compared to the blue lake, really the difference between those two colors. That blue lake is actually more what we would call opaque than the phthalo blue, which is a little bit more translucent. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind as you work with them. Same thing, because my yellows are obviously a lot lighter, I'm going to use put those down first as my base, because I will only need a drop of that blue to come in there. Again, you can see because it is such a dominant color, it really doesn't take a lot for that to change. Blue Lake is also really close to a color we would call cobalt blue. So if you had that color, you might have something pretty similar to the colors that you see here on mine. So I'm just going to continue finishing up my phthalo blue. When you start working on your black, just keep in mind that black goes a long way. A little black goes a long way. So I always would start off with the lighter color, which will be all of them, when you begin to work with that, because again, you don't need a lot, and it will obviously change your color pretty drastically. So really make sure that as you do work with black, that you are only adding a little bit at a time, and you always have more of the other color than black. So you would want to start off with, I'm going to start off by pulling some of my crimson. Because white's the last color, I know I definitely don't need a lot of color for that one. It's the reverse. So I'm going to make a little puddle of that, and then I'm going to just grab the smallest amount of black to start off with. Fill in my one square, and then gain just a little bit more, and then fill in my other square that has black in it. So as you work with the black, you still want to be able to see a little bit of the color. We know that obviously if we use too much black, it will definitely make that whole line would look just straight black. So we definitely want to try to see it for the most part. So the yellows, I'm going to definitely pull a lot more because they are so light. That's way too much. It will drastically change the effect of it right away. So we'll use the most there. Try to make sure that you're also mixing those colors really well. You can see from my yellow there, it was not mixed as great. So I'm going to take all that black that I had, that I didn't use, and obviously you can see that black just really killed the yellow that I had. But you can kind of see that it almost, it still doesn't look straight black. You can tell that there's enough of a color mixed in with that. It's a pretty ugly color nonetheless, but it's there. So now I'm going to continue with my medium yellow, doing the same thing, pulling up a little bit more of that. You can see I started to work to the outer edges of my palette, which is okay. Again, maybe you're working on just a piece of paper, whatever you have is fine. Cardboard, whatever. Hopefully you've seen as you've worked that you can really get a lot of different colors as you mix some of them. Some of them maybe you didn't really think. Like there's a lot of really dark colors mixing the two phthalos, even adding in using that crimson as the color. So hopefully you have seen some of that work, how that works. So just continue working on your black. So I'm on my final square, and I'm working with the white and the black. So again, finally, after all this, super small amount of black in with the white for this gray. And that was still a lot of black, but that's alright. And I'm going to add even more. So that way my black dominant one obviously does look darker. And hopefully now you have created fully your own mixing chart depending on the colors that you have. So if you have the same as mine, it'll look something like this.